Right. Make sure I've got audio. And I do. Very good. We are good to go. And I'm going to hand it over to Terry, who's going to be our host for today.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you on GoToWebinar, Facebook, and YouTube. Welcome and glad you're here for our Letting Go class with Guy Finley. My name is Terry, and I'll be the host for today's class. If you aren't familiar with our format this morning, Guy's going to give a talk approximately an hour in length, after which time we'll go right into a Q&A for all of you to join in. I'll go more into detail about that when the time comes, but just hope that you join in. It always makes such a great class. Your questions just bring up the responses that Guy gives. We learn so much from them. So hope you'll join in. And as always, because we're in the tech world, you have any issues, the first things that you can do is go out of your platform, come back in again to see if that works. Otherwise, just send a message to Kate at support@guyfinley.org, and she'll be able to help you. All right, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Guy, would you like me to read the topic and the key lesson?
Yes, please.
All right. This morning's topic is stop looking in all the wrong places and start seeing what's right in front of you. And the key lesson is no condition that our unconscious nature imagines into existence can change, let alone liberate that level of self that, out of fear, finds itself compelled to imagine it in order to feel secure. All right, Guy, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello and good morning to everyone. Glad that you are able to join us on this Sunday. We are going to start by trying to get all of us on the same page, meaning with, to some extent, whatever possible, a consensual understanding of our topic. And I'll start, before I ask Eric, who is our presenter today, to bring up a question I want to put in front of you. I'll start by asking a simple question, and that is, how many of you are at least somewhat aware of the fact that you keep looking in the wrong places for the right thing? I keep looking to other people to affirm me. I keep looking to the world around me to provide security. I keep hoping that a time will come that always proves itself, when it appears, to be insufficient to the purpose imagined. So though we can't have the usual dialogue we do when I'm streaming, at least not yet, I ask you to see that we are almost always looking in the wrong place for what it is that we are hoping to find there. And with that in mind, setting the stage, I'll ask Eric to post this question so that we can get started with our study. Please don't dismiss the question. I know sometimes it's hard, the mind sluggish, doesn't want to engage itself, but we must fight for ourselves in the right way, as I talked about yesterday on Insight Timer. The question that sets the stage is, how can I not want a moment before it shows me I was already set against it? How can I not want a moment that hasn't appeared, but when it does, as it does, I find myself resisting it? How is that possible? I trust you understand the question. I walk into a supermarket and I don't know that in 2 minutes from that point, I'm going to turn the corner and I'm going to see something that the minute I see it, as I see it, I don't want it. How can I come into these moments and find myself suffering over them when unless I don't understand it at all, somehow or other, that pain, that suffering, that resistance, that anger, that impatience, somehow it has gone before me and is waiting for me in a moment that hasn't happened yet. Please let it sink in. How can I not want a moment that hasn't happened, but as it happens, I don't want it? This is what we need to look at, because what do I suffer over? What do you suffer over? Other than constantly running into conditions that seem in one way or another, and this is what we're going to discover together, that seem to challenge a sense of myself I don't even know I'm clinging to, let alone attached to. Thank you. We can take the question down. Work with me. In these moments, our mind, the way it reacts, tells us that what we are looking at, what you said, what they did, the situation, the circumstance, that what we are looking at, the experience of the pain that we're having in that moment, is caused by the condition that has unfolded. This is our usual mind. The condition is responsible for the conflict I feel with it. That is not the truth. The condition we see is not responsible for the conflict we feel upon seeing it, for the blame that follows, but rather that experience of that moment, of that conflict with conditions, is born out of something we don't know yet about our own psychological nature. And that is that prior to entering into that moment, we walk around literally a legion, much as Christ described. A legion of different identities, of different formulations, shapes and sizes, intensity of ourself that we don't know. We are all the time kind of being dressed in, determined by the conditions that call out of this unconscious nature, whatever it has created in the past to meet moments that have challenged it. So this is a mistaken identity. But we don't know it's mistaken because it feels so real to us when it goes, no, I don't want this. No, this is wrong. But that whole suffering belongs to a self that has been imagined into existence. Just listen, this will become clear. It belongs to a self that has been imagined into existence. Now this, I'm going to spend as much time as I have to try to get this clear. What is this self, this part of me that resists and reacts even before I know that it's down there waiting to pop out? What is this self, this imagined existence, other than some part of myself that I do not know exists, that acts upon me at all time, that along comes a certain moment, and that moment causes this reaction. In the moment this reaction comes up, the only thing that we know to do with that reaction is to try and think about what has caused it, if we don't already know by the nature of the reaction that points immediately to the blame, to what it blames. But what I'm saying to you is that what has taken place is that we have, without knowing it, imagined, for all intents and purposes, not just the way our future should be, but in the future we've imagined where everybody likes me, where nothing goes wrong, where the weather's always perfect, where I lost the weight, where I've gained this money, that in this future that we've imagined comes with it inescapably the conditions that that nature has imagined required to bring about that sense of self. And when conditions that are real challenge what we have imagined those conditions should be in order to support this sense of self that's comforted or has been saved by what it imagines, instantaneously we are caught in some form of conflict with what is, because it does not match what we have imagined needs to be in order for us to be who we imagine we are. I'll slow this down, simplify it further. I've asked Eric to post something. Let's post this key lesson, please. I will explain it. In essence, all psychological suffering arises within a mind in conflict with itself. A conflict created by this same unconscious mind comparing what is or is not to what it has imagined should be. When we imagine a future that this mind does automatically when it, in the present moment, it doesn't like what it's experiencing, when it doesn't want the pain of what it blames on the moment, that mind then does what? It begins to start thinking. It begins analyzing what it says is the cause of its pain. And as it analyzes what it says is the cause of its pain, it's looking at the condition as responsible for its suffering, when the actual condition this unconscious nature is experiencing in that moment is the conflict between a sense of self that depends on the conditions it's imagined unfolding as they've been imagined, and when anything comes along and challenges what that nature has imagined it must have and be in order to be free, instantaneous suffering. So that we can take down this key lesson, please. Unseen clearly by us is that this moment of conflict is because an imagined self has met a set of circumstances that don't match the conditions that self imagined in order to be whole and free. You can't imagine a time to come, good or bad, without a corresponding sense of I, of self, being there, imagining it. How can there be something imagined without some self imagining it? That which is imagined belongs to an order of self that imagines a time to come when it won't have to deal with what it doesn't want anymore, when it won't have to deal with what it doesn't want to experience, so it imagines a time to come. The time to come must have the conditions that that self has imagined, so that as we imagine this time to come and the conditions that will complete us when we get there, we have, without knowing it, become attached and dependent on a set of imagined conditions that when something challenges what we've imagined, we simply fall back into imagination in order to control or escape what is imagined to begin with. If this imagined sense of self doesn't exist apart from the conditions it's imagined, can you follow that much? Here's this imagined sense of self. I don't think it's imagined. I was in pain. My mind said it's because of this, and it blames that. And then my mind simply says, well, here, as soon as you get this done, as soon as she becomes what you want her to be, as soon as you get enough of this or get away from that, as soon as all of that takes place, then what you are imagining you will be in that time to come, you will be. And we feel the consolation, the sense of security, because now we are experiencing this sense of self that can't be separated from the time it's imagined. And if that's true, which it is, and I'm just praying I'm being clear enough for you to see this, then if these conditions are imagined, that when I get to them I'll be free, then these conditions are going to have to be protected at all costs. So these imagined conditions must be protected at all costs, even though they are as unreal as the sense of self that has imagined them. This is the source of all of our tension, is that without knowing it, we are attached to and dependent on an identity derived from a time to come where everything will at last be ironed out. My regrets, my suffering over the past will have been resolved. When I figure it out in a time to come. My anxiety about my inadequacy, all of that will disappear. When I finally get the acclamation, the fame, the money, when I finally get that job, when I finally transcend whatever it is that seems to follow me wherever I go, then in that time to come, I will be complete. And that identification with what we have imagined we will become ensures that anything that challenges those conditions as imagined will come and grab us, will come and drag us down into the fear that we didn't know was created when we became identified with an imagined set of conditions that unless they were kept in place and completed as imagined, then we would have to face ourselves again, or worse, fall deeper into whatever that circumstance is that we're trying to imagine ourselves out of. Trying to imagine myself out of my pain, having failed to see that the pain I'm in is because of what I've imagined myself needing to be in a time to come. I don't know if you can see it. I'm anxious. What does my anxious mind do? It imagines a scenario where everything, like some combination vault, tumbles into place and everything opens up. The darkness at the end of the tunnel turns to light, and now I'm on a track towards feeling comfortable, confident, and secure again. Failing to see that what I've imagined is going to happen will be, when the conditions prove it is imagined, the very conflict that I will then experience again and go through time and time again, trying to imagine a place where I can no longer have to experience this nature, this sense of self that doesn't know what else to do with its unhappiness, that doesn't know what else to do with its sense of inadequacy, that doesn't know what else to do with its fear other than hope in things seen, hope in a time to come, where, however it happens, I will become the person I'm meant to be. Failing to see that when I fail to miss that mark, I suffer for having imagined myself and identifying with a self that keeps proving itself too elusive because, in fact, it is imagined. This imaginary self, this condition that it imagines, where it gets what it has to have and people do what they're supposed to do, and this government and that group of people finally understand where they've missed the mark. In that time to come, then I'll be happy. There are so many different ways in which the ancient teachings, which aren't ancient at all, by the way, try to help us understand this prison. Not a world that has imprisoned me, but the prison of being confined to fighting all the time to make the conditions I've imagined I need to be free unfold as imagined. And anything that gets into the mix, a simple word, a simple glimpse, throws that monkey wrench into the works of all that I've imagined, and suddenly the whole machinery grinds to a halt. And there I am being ground up one more time by my anxiety or fear that wouldn't exist if there hadn't been established a false identity that was derived from an equally false nature, imagining a time to come when it will be free of its own conflict. In the New Testament, I'm going to speak a little bit about a couple things that Christ talked about. There are two parables, and they are inextricably tied together. And they are inextricably tied together in that they are both presenting a lesson that is hidden underneath the verbiage, not to mention how old the language was and how messed up it became when it was translated. But these lessons are mandatory if we're ever, as a human being, to finally, as the talk title says, stop looking in all the wrong places and start seeing what's in front of us. When we look into a time to come where we will become at last who and what we're meant to be, and imagine that time to come because we derive that sense of self from it, we are looking in the wrong place. And the proof we're looking in the wrong place is that every time we look in that place will run into something that denies its existence, and suddenly we will feel as if we've lost our life. Here's the story of the prodigal son. Take a nice deep breath. I hope you know the story of the prodigal son in the New Testament. If you don't, ever so quickly, the story goes, a young man discontent with his father's home and that what he's provided there, decides he's going to go out into the world and he's going to make of himself what he has imagined he must make of himself to feel good about himself. And that may include to win his father's approval, which he also imagines what it would be like to have that. And he runs into nothing but nightmares. And at the end, the story goes, having recognized he'd squandered all that he'd been given, he says to himself, I'd been better off if I stayed home, and he returns. Now, I'm going to bring you into a conversation that was not written, that was not mentioned, but that I guarantee you is behind that parable. Here's the prodigal son, and he goes to his father, representing the divine, representing however you would put it, this perfect intelligence, this perfect love, responsible for the creation of the son. And the son says to the father, I got to go. Where are you going? I'm going out there. I'm going out into the world. And you'll see, I'm going to really prove that I'm worth more than you presently lend to me. Because here, I don't seem to be important. Out there, I will be. And here's the part that's not written. The father turns to the son and he says, do as you will, my beloved son. But there's nothing out there for you. Do as you will, my beloved son, but there is nothing out there for you. And when that's clear, please come back. You will always be welcome. Now, what does that mean? There's nothing out there for you. The prodigal son learned the hard way, didn't he? That out there as represented by a world and possibilities and pleasures and powers and possessions, that out there really wasn't out there at all, was it? Sure, there's a world with all of those things. But when the Father said, you won't find out there what you're looking for, he was saying, son, you are imagining that if you had these things, if you could do those things, if people saw you this way, you're imagining in a time to come. That which, even as you accomplish what you imagine will do that, will be proven to be as conditional as what you have brought into this world. And when the conditions collapse, my son, your identification with them will create the collapse of who you think you are, and you will return to this impoverished state that you believe exists because something inside of you is telling you you're not enough as you are. So the Father was saying that what you are looking for out there cannot be found in passing time. And what is passing time other than what the mind imagines awaits it in time, where at last it will be as triumphant as it imagines it's meant to be? What is passing time other than this idea that, by the way, only occurs to me in a storm? When have you noticed, when is it that suddenly your mind starts to think, I need a harbor of safety? When is it that your mind says, I need people to think about me in a different way that affirms me as I imagine myself to be? When does that take place other than in the moment where conditions that you didn't know were going to cause you to feel the same insecurity again? The conditions collapse, and up comes that nature that had hidden itself in a time to come, and the sense of self derived from it. And there it is again. In a much similar vein, if you can make this transition with me, although it's not evident at all to the average mind, Christ asked his disciples, what person, what man taking thought can add 1 cubit to his stature? What man taking thought can add 1 cubit to his stature? Now, what does that have to do with the Father telling the Son, there's nothing out there for you? The question, what man taking thought can add 1 cubit to his stature, was never meant to become what it is now, some philosophical question. The so-called Sadducees and Pharisees, the intelligentsia, the studied Bible people, who will sit and talk as if they understand what it means. Well, here's what it means. You can't make yourself bigger or better by taking thought. Even as the person taking those thoughts is aggrandized by their understanding and think to themselves, I know. It was never meant to be a philosophical question. What man taking thought add 1 cubit to his stature was asking the aspirant to do what all true teachings ask aspirants to do, which is what? To examine the unseen nature of the relationship that person has with the nature of thought itself. We never examine the nature the nature of our relationship with thought itself. We take the thought to be the thing. The thought about tomorrow, where I've escaped this torment of being someone punished years ago. I take the thought of tomorrow and the sense of self derived from it as the thing itself. And I take it as the thing itself because as the mind considers this time to come when it'll be free, it experiences the conditioned freedom that it is imagining. And so the sense of this nature is flooded with a very familiar sense of self, I might add. It's not a new sense of self. The sense of security to come isn't a new security to come. It's a revisioned, reshaped security. This shape didn't work out. I just reshape it. So that this constant relationship we have with thought, this thought of who I am and should be runs into something that challenges the imagined nature that creates the thought. And the next thing I know, I have to do it again. And this level of mind is always trying to free itself. It finds some moment of feeling free because it identifies with whatever that imagined sense of self is that is created in some time when it be completed. And then the conditions prove it's imagined, and then I have to imagine freedom again. Freedom from what? Freedom from my insecurity. Freedom from my feeling of being inadequate. Freedom from my anger, from my regret. Freedom from a world that just won't let me alone. And this is so seemingly natural to us that in the moment where suddenly we're back a captive in a prison, feeling imprisoned, it never dawns on us that the only way we know to escape the conditions that have proven to us that the self we imagined and the conditions we aspire to were imagined and cannot do what we've imagined them to do. All we know to do when we run into this sense of self, the experience of a self that we don't want, is to imagine another time to come where another sense of self derived from those conditions will release us from our captivity. I hope we're communicating. At the root of all of this misunderstanding is the suffering. I don't suffer because of what's happened. I suffer because it shouldn't have happened. I don't suffer because of what you said. I suffer because you shouldn't have said it. And the way I know it shouldn't have happened, or that you shouldn't have said it, that they shouldn't have been that way, or the world shouldn't have turned this way, it should have turned that way. The only way that I suffer in that moment is because before that moment, I had become, without knowing it, dependent on an identity that is inseparable from the conditions it imagined the last time that someone said or didn't do, or the world turned seemingly against me. The world doesn't turn against you. It cannot. The world always turns in favor of those who are willing to see the truth of themselves. But in order to see the truth of ourselves, we must turn ourselves in the right direction in that moment. And the right direction that we must turn in the moment where everything seems to have turned against us is to turn our attention back to the revelation that this couldn't be happening unless, without knowing it, I was so sure going into this moment that this is the way it's meant to be. Now it's not that way. Now I have to find new meaning. And where do I find new meaning? Other than in a time to come that when I get there, everything that I've imagined will be waiting for me, and at last I'll be free. I know how all of this falls on you, because I know how all of it fell on me. Even if you don't follow the language, you get the drift. The gist of it is that there is no freedom coming in a time to come. It doesn't matter what you imagine you will become. Because the moment you've imagined what you must become, or what others must become, or what your future must become, the moment you go into imagination about a time to come, you are a captive of the fear of anything that challenges the conditions you imagined were required in order for you to achieve what you imagined would make you whole. It's inconceivable to us, even as it falls clearly as intended, squarely, onto some level of understanding. The illusion is that freedom is in a time to come. It's my only hope. If you look at it, what other hope do I have? I'm stuck in this job. I'm with this person. This problem won't go away. I have this addiction. I'm a violent person, and I don't want anybody to know how angry I am. What am I meant to do with all of this that I don't know what to do with? And what happens is that mind says, here's what you do. Kick the can of that consciousness that you don't want and the experience it creates, just kick it down the road. And here's how to do it. We're going to imagine how good it's going to feel when he sees how wrong he was to have done what he did. And look, it's going to take time for you to get him to see that way, or it's going to take time for you to forgive him. But don't worry, because that mind is looking at the image that it has made of that time to come, and in that image, the identity, inseparable from the image. Image and identity are one thing. And in the image and in the identity is the attachment and the dependency upon those conditions working out as imagined. And the minute something threatens the conditions, as we've been describing, now I've got to protect the conditions. That's what tension is. Tension is the futile attempt to protect imagined conditions. That's the only definition of true anxiety and tension, the real definition of it. The attempt to protect a set of imagined conditions by first trying to make sure that they go the way they're supposed to go so the imagined self will be okay, or fighting with those conditions. Fighting with my own memories. You know, when you go back in the past and relive something painful, it feels to you as if what you are remembering and bringing up that pain, it feels to you as if those memories and that moment in time is different than the self that's experiencing it. And it's not. That sense of self doesn't exist without the time that it has gone out into. So when it's said, there's nothing out there for you, it means there's nothing out there in anything you will imagine that is going to bring you into this relationship with this peace that passes understanding that your heart of hearts longs for. If you can see this even in a small way, because I can feel some of it as it settles in, what peace there is in knowing that I don't have to have some time to come in order to be complete. That who I am, that who you are, as it also says in Scripture, that God did not make a fearful spirit, that everything about my life, when those conditions are challenged, when you won't cooperate, that every time that happens, the struggle is to try to keep in place who I am. I don't know who I am unless I find what I need to blame, to prove to myself that I am as I've imagined myself to be. I was thinking, as we get near the end of this talk, how these two parables, there's nothing out there for you. Go if you will, but there's nothing out there for you. And what man taking thought can add a cubit to his stature? How, if we see the big picture here, we start to understand a little bit about some of this puzzling, if not painful, paradox, not just in the New Testament or the Old Testament, but in all the scriptures, that one way or another try to convey this idea that if you want to find your real life, you're going to have to lose the false one. Because it never occurs to us that our life is imagined and the sense of self so uplifted or so downtrodden only exists as it does in that moment because of the conditions it imagined that are now aligned with it or set against it. And there's my identity. When Christ said, you must lose your life, he wasn't saying just lose the painful parts of it. That's what we think. You must lose your life to find it. Well, look, I'm all on board with that. I want to lose my anger. I want to lose my fear. I want to lose my impatience. I want to lose this sense of betrayal. I want to lose these things. They're so painful. But for us, the way we lose those moments where this pain appears is to do what? Is to immediately believe that we know the source of that suffering. And then as that becomes clear, lay a plan that circumvents or controls those conditions that we're blaming. And all of that planning, all of that is in a time to come. Christ didn't say, lose this or that painful part of your life if you want to find your real life. He was asking his disciples, as every true teacher does, however they put the words, to see that what they believed was their life isn't their life, that what you believe is your life now is in fact the source of your pain. Because what you believe your life to be is what you imagine it to be. And this world feeds it. Every success guru in the world tells you, just imagine it. That's the secret of secrets. Imagine it and make it happen. Failing to say that after you've imagined, and even if you make it happen, then you'll spend your life having to protect what you believe was going to produce for you a perfect sense of peace. Because there is no peace in an imagined life. Because an imagined life requires the conditions that support it, and we have no authority over conditions. In fact, quite the contrary. The conditions that come into our life are not set against us. The conditions that come into our life are given to us, so that in what is given to us, we can see what we're clinging to and how there's no room in the inn, how there's no room in this inner life for revelation. Because the moment in which reality conflicts with what we've imagined life is in reality, in that moment, we just throw it away. And we throw it away for the sake of a time to come that will become the next torment when the conditions it's imagined are challenged. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added to you. Kingdom of heaven, where? Moksha, liberation, enlightenment, rebirth, where is that? Well, it's within. Within what? Within a timeless order of being. Within the understanding that there is no place to go and nothing to do in order to bring an end to our suffering, but rather the end of this suffering comes when at last we realize and then bear what we must in seeing that the first thing that happens when something comes that I don't want is something will start talking to us, and it'll start saying, look out there. Look over there. Look at that. And because the way the mind is wired, when it says look over there, look out there, that mind is looking at some object, some condition, something imagined. It has fashioned from itself what it now believes is the freedom it just lost. And we cannot see yet, but God willing, at least starting with this talk, I can begin to see, wait a minute. It's saying, look out there. It's saying, hold on. There is a time to come. And that's where my rescue is. That's where my relief waits for me. Out there somewhere. It's out there. No, it's not out there. And I don't know how many times a man or a woman has to go out like the prodigal son, not into the world. The prodigal son went into a physical world, the physical world representing the objects, the promise of things to come. So the prodigal son, the man who takes thought without knowing it, goes into the time to become, the time it takes to become. And no such time exists. And ours is the discovery over and over again, to use the words that seem contradictory. Each time we realize that there was nothing out there. I'm with my husband and he says the cruelest things. I'm with a group of people and one of them drops this passive-aggressive comment and it stings me right to the core of myself. I look at the news and once more I'm absolutely on fire. And as all that's going on, in fact, the thing that's so attractive, imagine the thing that's so attractive about watching the news. And by the way, when you're talking to yourself, whether you know it or not, you're not just watching the news, you're watching old news. And as you watch the news, aren't you filled with anticipation? What if this? Well, what about that? And every news broadcast, everything you talk to yourself about doesn't exist as a fascination without a time to come when at last all of that will go away, or at last all of that trouble will finally leave me. So that built into our fascination with problems is A, the resistance to something that has challenged my perfection as imagined, and then out of that problem, yet another thing imagined, where in a time to come I won't suffer anymore. When all of these people stop bothering me, I won't suffering anymore. When this world stops asking me to do things, when at last I can put down this response. People, when I retire, fear of death is inseparable from the gradual awakening to the fact that you're running out of time to imagine a time to come when you'll be free. because no such time exists when you will be free. We realize, if we understand anything that we've been talking about, that to stop looking out there means in that moment to stop looking at what thought is pointing to and talking to you about what has happened. To stop that, to understand there's nothing out there. However I come to it means I'm not going to rescue myself anymore with thought. I'm not going to take thought to create a time when I won't be anxious, because whatever thought I take is imagined, and any imagined thought is conditional, and all conditions create tension when anything challenges whatever they purport. What will happen if I actually, like the prodigal son, instead of going out, which we do every day 1,000 times, if I hear my father, there's nothing out there for you. There's nothing out there for you. But I want. But I have these needs. I have this anger. I have this fear. What am I to do with it? Don't look out there for a way to transcend a suffering that only exists because you have looked out there and become identified. I started the talk by saying, isn't it extraordinary that I can be upset at the drop of a hat, not even knowing that I brought into that moment this demand with me that you be or they do as I ask? Well, what's the nature of that demand? That demand is there protecting the conditions that were first imagined. The condition that says, I'm going to become someone so respectable, so wealthy, so authoritative, so widely renowned that nobody is going to disrespect me anymore. Now my plan is laid out in time, and I will serve that plan. I will sell my soul to acquire the conditions that are imagined to free me. That's what selling your soul to the devil is. The devil in Scripture has nothing to do with what we imagine it. This unholy nature is part of an unconscious mind that creates time in order to escape its own time torment, the torment of time that doesn't exist except for a self trying to escape it. So somehow a person has to realize, here I am suddenly anxious, I'm stressed, I'm angry. And then to see in that moment, as it's taking place, this mind in the dark of itself, fashioning what you have to do, what you have to say. God, I want to make this clear. Here I am, now I know what to say. Well, when do I know when to say it? In a time to come. And yet I derive a sense of comfort out of having the last word, and you're not even there for me to give it to you. So I'm strong in a time to come because I've imagined the conditions where I'm going to be strong. I'm safe in a time to come because I've imagined a security that will be unshakable in a time to come when all the conditions required are finally put together. And if I haven't made that clear, and I'm sorry if I've been redundant, the whole nature of becoming is the prison. And the prison isn't the world in which you feel imprisoned. The prison is the world you imagine that one day when you get to what, where, and when in that world you will be released from your worries. So if there's an exercise inherent in this, it is to start realizing in this moment where suddenly there's this contraction, this resistance, this stress, laying in bed, worrying about what's going to happen, and laying all of these plans. I'm not saying to throw out what is practical, but I'm asking you to see there is nothing practical about being in pain over conditions you can't control. And instead of allowing this mind to do as it always does, which is to send you out there, to go looking out there, realize there is no out there, that out there is simply as imagined as the self that needs to imagine it. And then begin, as that understanding grows, to reject summarily, ruthlessly, any thought or feeling that wants you to believe that in a time to come, you will be other than who you don't want to be in the now. When is it more important for me to have a time to come than when I don't want the time I'm in? And what is the time I'm in other than my experience of it? And what is it that I'm really experiencing other than my own time nature that first created conditions that I became dependent on for this identity, and then suddenly I'm angry, I'm upset. Why? Because the demand of that nature, that nothing contradict the conditions it's imagined, that demand then meets every moment. And it seems to us that when we make these demands, it's the path to achieving the power over the circumstance. No, the demand places you under the power of an unconscious nature that knows nothing about itself. So here are two reasons, if you need them, to summarize this talk. This idea of why you must realize there's nothing out there in a time to come. One, the time we imagine that we need to change, it's not coming. The time we imagine we need to change, it's not coming. You get angry, you imagine, well, you know what, I'm going to be forgiving. You find yourself doing something cruel, and your mind says, you should be more Christ-like. And then the mind imagines the icon it has of Christ, and that one day it will be like that. No, it won't. Christ isn't in a time to come. The wisdom of Buddha, the perfect love of what is divine, the sun that makes itself shine on good and evil, that's not in a time to come. It's here, it's now, or it's never. So that to imagine we will change in a time to come needs to be dropped on the spot by seeing if we've understood this at all. That time isn't coming. Because why? The second part, either we are being changed in the light of this life that shows us the truth of ourselves, either we're being changed in this moment or we are not. And we also have evidence of that truth. If any of you have ever actually changed, was it in a time to come? Or was it in a time you couldn't have expected for 1,000,000 years? When by the grace of God, you suddenly see something about yourself that you'd never seen because it had always been kicked away. And there it is. And that moment of change is inseparable from losing that sense of identification with an order of yourself that you always thought was you, so that the real change is in the loss of yourself, not in gaining what had been imagined. All real epiphanies help unweave this web of thoughts, help dismantle this system of time in which we struggle, but for our struggles can never succeed to bring an end to our suffering. Catch yourself looking into a time to come and deriving that sense of self that's comforted by what's imagined. When you can start catching yourself being comforted by an imagined time to come, you will then understand all that makes you uncomfortable when that time to come, as imagined, has been proven imaginary. In that moment, that nature, whatever it has been complicit in creating, it will start to collapse. The mind will start to grow quiet because it's no longer talking to itself about a time to come. It's too busy experiencing its own timeless security. I think that's probably enough for this portion of our meeting. We'll have our dialogue in a couple minutes. If you need to use a facility, get a glass of water. I think Terry has some announcements to make, and then we will pick up with whatever comments, questions, or whatever you want to talk about. You're on, Terry.
Thank you, Guy. Yeah, thank you for your talk. All right, yeah, so now before I get into the Q&A here, just want to make a quick announcement, and this is for the local students here. Next Sunday, which is August the 3rd, Guy will be speaking at our annex building over at the foundation. He will physically be there giving the talk, so you will not see that backdrop. You'll see another one. So just wanted to let all of you know, the local students, that you're welcome to go over there and join in for that discussion, talk and discussion.
And likely the 10th and the 17th, likely the 10th and the 17th, but that'll be announced each Sunday.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. So now this is our Q&A time. And just wanted to let you know, so the people that are on GoToWebinar, they can actually come on and speak to Guy. Facebook and YouTube, you do have to send in a question, which will be related to me that I can read to Guy. So please feel free to do that. We do have a few questions already to start the Q&A with, and we'll keep an eye on the queue for the hands. So let me just go ahead, Guy, and let's go to the first question that came in this week. And that question is from somebody named Yardley. How does one not feel like if they're living unconsciously, then they have done life wrong? I ask because I feel I need to clear out all of this stuff before I pass, which feels like failure if I don't, and I'm not free.
Read it one more time, please.
All right. How does one not feel like if they are living unconsciously, then they have done life wrong? I ask because I feel I need to clear out all of this stuff before I pass, which feels like failure if I don't, and I'm not free.
Hi, Jardley. Look, his question brings up something that ordinarily I don't think would be noticed in it. Just as I was hoping to show that in those two passages, in the parable of the prodigal son and in the quotation, what man taking thought can add a cubit to his stature, how there are teachings and lessons hidden in it. Jardley's asking, how does one not feel like, if they are living unconsciously, that they have done life wrong? That seems like a wise question, but it's not. The actual wisdom is hidden in this idea. He's asking, how do I not feel the way I do? That was the whole talk. How do I not feel like I've wasted my life? How do I not feel like I've missed the mark? And what I must see is that anything that in me, Jardley, that doesn't want to feel what it does, sits in judgment of itself. But in the judgment of itself, it imagines a time when it won't be judged because it will have transcended everything it doesn't want to feel now. You will never transcend what you don't want to feel. You will never transcend a past that you don't want. Why? Because not wanting that feeling is identification. Resistance is identification. So the more I don't want to feel something, the more I attend to it. And the more I attend to what I don't want to feel, the more evident it becomes, this is wrong, and now I must do something to make things right. And when am I going to make it right? In a time to come. How do I not feel that I've missed the mark? You can't, unless in that moment you understand your task isn't to be in a time of the past that is judging your present actions. Your task isn't to be in a future where you will escape the consequences of your actions. Your responsibility in that moment, Jardley, is to be there present to a nature that is judging itself and trying to escape itself by separating itself from what it doesn't want to experience, either in the past or in a time to come, because both levels by that line of time is imagined. The antidote is in the venom, said Rumi. The antidote to what I don't want to feel is in being aware of the parts of myself that don't want anything to do with that feeling. The parts of myself that actually believe they are other than their own experience. That's division, Jardley. I don't want this feeling because I shouldn't have it. But I know why I have it, because I've missed the mark. Therefore, the solution is to hit the mark at some point in time. No, now is the time to hit the mark. Now is the time to be aware of the nature that judges itself, so that instead of judging myself and finding myself judged by my own nature, I see through the whole mechanism of judgment. It never even occurs to us, and it must one day. What do I judge other than that which doesn't align with what I've imagined life must do and be? What do I judge other than you who are not in this moment the way you're supposed to be? So that inextricable from all of these feelings that I don't want is an attachment to an identity derived about how I should be and how I must be. It's inextricable. And I see that, Jardley, and suddenly I'm not struggling not to feel anything anymore. I'm so deeply aware of the consciousness and the feelings that it has produced, I understand it. We transcend what we don't want by transcending desire, not the experience of it. We transcend what we don't want by transcending the desire that creates want and not want. All of this can be understood, but it must be experiential. You can't think your way out of this. Thought is time. When you take thought, when you start thinking, you are thinking from a body of knowledge that is the past, and then you turn to that body of knowledge that is the past in order to prescribe a future, that when you get to it, you'll be free. And when you get to the future, you're not in the future imagined. You're back in the prison of the past as it imagines how to escape itself, which it can't do. Then you lose your life and you find something that is timeless, that isn't afraid of itself, Charlie. Let's go on, Terry.
Oh, thank you, Guy. All right, let's go to the next question. And this question came in from Rich. Rich asks, my hunger for truth has become a drug. I see it now. I thought I was in that place Christ spoke of. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. But what I sense now feels darker, sneakier. It's not a holy hunger. It's an addiction to insight. If I can't read the next book, watch the next talk, or access the internet, I feel tormented, agitated, like I'm missing something vital. That can't be the spirit, can it? How is darkness allowed to mimic hunger for truth so convincingly? How do I stop feeding that part of me that only wants to know so it can keep feeling like it's on the path? Should I stop seeking entirely and instead sit in the fire of that discomfort? Sit in the awareness that I've made a God out of the knowledge itself?
Hi, Rich. It's an important question. It is a deep question, and it is indicative of a certain point along the path that maybe most of the people joining us don't understand or haven't reached, but that I can tell you, Rich, that is an inescapable point along the path. Our general main sense of self, our identity as we know it and as we are comfortable with it, is an almost ceaseless analysis, born of an almost ceaseless analysis of the sensations that the mind generates as it seeks, considers, and consolidates the sensations of itself produced by its seeking. A child doesn't have to go out seeking the experience of itself. A child is introduced to its own body. A child doesn't introduce itself to its body. The child is equipped, born with features that allow it to not just start awakening to its body, but having some modicum of control over it, and the entire series of sensations of growing up are kind of an endless fascination with the capacity that one has to explore, to control, to run, to catch, to have sexual experience, the pleasure of food. But at a certain point comes the realization that these sensations are limited. That I go out there, I look out there to that pleasure, to the possibility of avoiding any pain if I just put this together. And at a certain point, that kind of sensation of being loved, approved, wanted, desired, being hated, being reproved, all of that loses its fascination because this mind is so saturated with the sensation of itself, it's bored with itself. And at that point, a certain fork in the road takes place, and a person either begins realizing that the world that he or she has been out there looking into for its sense of self, it's not going to find it there. And either a person begins an authentic spiritual search, Or a person then turns to further destroying the body, deeper addictions, more sensation, more pleasure, more stress. So it exacerbates the sensations that have proven themselves empty because it doesn't know what to fill itself with, or to the point it sees it cannot fill itself with what it thought would make it free. But that same mind is still at work, Rich. And it's okay. There's nothing you can do about it. Now it becomes hungry for insight into its own appetites. Because still divided, it believes that the insight it can gain into itself, it will somehow empower it over what presently has power over it. So I become a chela, I become an advocate, I become a disciple of Christ, I become a fanatic of some religious type. And I can quote scripture, I know it all. Just ask me. But please don't look for me in the dark of night when I'm laying in bed, when all that I know has proven itself fruitless. Because in the next morning when I wake up, all I know to do, as Rich has described, is to find the next titillation, the next titillating truth. Because I hunger for a sense of self that I don't understand every time it's derived from some thought it has, from some insight it identifies with, that it doesn't matter how lofty the insight is. If there's a nature identifying with it, it is not my insight. It belongs to a nature, as you have described, Rich, that simply wants the continuity of itself, only now it seeks for this continuity through this momentary completion of itself as it drinks from its insight. Do you know that when a man gets to a certain point, a woman gets to a certain point, they don't drink from their epiphanies because there's no cup separate from the consciousness that that's unfolding in. A person can be as addicted to the search for what is true as they are addicted to what is untrue. This is represented in the fall in the Garden of Eden. The knowledge of good and evil. One doesn't understand that when we have this knowledge of good and evil, because the mind has fallen into this divided state, where now I am here, but in a time to come I will know. And when I know what is good, now there's a distance between myself and what is bad, and I must escape what is bad. Where do I escape what is bad in a time to come? Now I know what is good because I've seen what is bad. How do I get to what is good? I will get to what is good in a time to come, and I'll cement it there. No, you won't. But if you see all of this without judging yourself, then you will become as intended, not the one conquering his nature, but the one exploring his nature through the light of Christ, the one exploring who and what he is through the light of God, in the light of what is true. And in true exploration, there's no beginning or end. Because in true exploration, there is the advent of a light that reveals that who and what you are is as endless as what you are interested in discovering, and the discovery is endless. That's where a person is free, Rich. When they can sit and allow these epiphanies to come and not get all caught up and inside of them. Instead, let them continue to unfold. Allow that mind that has begun to see into itself to increase the capacity it has, so that the eyes that behold what they do gradually are no longer your eyes, but they are the eyes of the divine itself, seeing itself as it is, unfolding as it does. Then one has the freedom that one only knows how to look for in spiritual ideas and the sense of self derived from it. No sense of self is free because every sense of self is conditional. Get rid of that conditional nature by seeing through its activity, and you come to an unconditional freedom, what you are actually looking for, Rich. Ready to move on, please?
All right, thank you, Guy. Gosh. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to a hand in the queue next, and then we're going to go back to, we have some more questions, but feel free to raise hands too. All right, we're going to go next to Shoshona. Here you go, Shoshona.
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Guy. This particular talk was, it was doing exactly what you warned it not to do, but which was lighting up everything before it. But I really just want to share is understanding the importance of what you're studying to get away from just the being that you are and experiencing everything good or bad. And I too have fallen into the rut of studying and connecting and identifying with so many aspects of life that I had in so many ways forgotten just to appreciate these tiny, micro, small movements and gratitude for all that is at all times. So I just want to thank you and sending love to you and everybody at the foundation. And hi to Patricia.
Hi, Shoshana. And yeah, I mean, if everyone can understand, or at least get close to understanding, epiphanies are beautiful. Thank God. Thank God. Here's Paul on the road to Damascus. So bright was the revelation of a nature that he thought was good, that by the light of Christ, by the light of truth, he saw not only wasn't good, but that glorified him, not the God he thought he was protecting of the Jews. So the whole thing of Paul just collapses. Actually, his name was Saul, and then he became Paul. A change in name significant in the difference in his character and his quality, his spirit. So that moment that seems so dark is because of the extent of the light. And we mustn't think to ourselves that there shouldn't be this light, that I shouldn't have this feeling this way. You don't push away anything. Perceive everything. Everything already has its natural place. And that includes you and I, made in the image of God, participants in this world and its relationship to the heavens, responsible for sustaining it. Everything has its place. And everything in its place need not take thought what that place is. It need only, in our instance, perceive the truth of that. And then it just unfolds. There's not this terrible perception about myself. There's just the perception of where it is that I've misunderstood something, and in the instancy of that perception, the change in the character that was identified with it. It's so difficult for us to understand that life isn't difficult, because something in us not only requires difficulty so that it can solve the problem, but then in solving the problem creates the next difficulty, and it just runs round and round, going nowhere. When you see that you run round and round, going nowhere, you will die to the movement of time, you will die to the mind that creates the time, and you will find yourself beginning to be immersed in a timeless world that is inseparable from the timeless being that is experiencing it. Let's go on, Terry.
Thank you, Shoshana. All right, I'm going to read the next question here. This question came in from Jordan. Guy, if before enlightenment we chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment, we do the same, then what actually changes within the one chopping and carrying?
I wonder what would happen to us. Is that going to get posted? I wonder what happens. What would happen to us if we didn't have all of these ideas to help us deal with what troubles us? I wonder what would happen if we didn't have all of these ideas, if we didn't have all of these icons, if we didn't have all of these images. I wonder what would happen if we didn't have any of them to deal with what troubles us. I pose the question that way because it is when at last we see that our troubles are born out of these ideals, these ideas, these icons. When we see that our trouble in life is because of them, then we can stop trying to figure out who's chopping, who's carrying, and then who will be chopping and who will be carrying. That's one level of answer, Jordan. The other level of answering is that when you chop wood and carry water before you understand what is true, you're chopping and carrying to get through and be over chopping and carrying, because the mind already has a time in mind when it will rest from chopping and carrying. But as the mind wakes up to the deception of itself, then it simply chops and carries because it's too busy living in what is timeless. It's too busy deriving the impressions from the weight of the axe, from the smell of the water, from the weight of the bucket in its hand, from the environment it's in while it's doing these things. It is living in another world that isn't in time, so that it is not trying to come to an end of carrying and chopping, and it is not trying to imagine what carrying and chopping will do for it. That's my answer.
Thank you, Guy. All right, I've been told that Denise Welch would like to speak, and she's having a problem with her hand icon. So Denise, I'm going to just go ahead and unmute you. Hopefully that'll work. You'll have to, there you go.
Good morning. Thank you, Terry. Hello, Guy.
Hi, Denise.
I wanted to try and talk to you a little bit about hope.
About hope?
Hope.
Okay.
So I think I've held a natural and what I believe is an important hope as a mother for the physical healing of my child. But recently, a person, a well-meaning person who thought was doing me a favor, told me that that time of being healed that I'm hoping for is not coming, and I have to prepare for that. And what my response was, I can't go there. Denise can't go there. I have to hold hope. But how do I hope without suffering over whatever may be the outcome?
I understand your question, and I'll come at it several different ways, okay?
Okay.
First, and I wasn't there when this person spoke to you, but even if it is or was a doctor with great knowledge in whatever it is that is whatever is being inflicted upon your son or daughter, everything would depend upon the way in which he would say something like that to you. If, according to all the knowledge that that person has acquired of similar subjects, that there comes a certain point in time, as happens with a certain person, a person gets a certain cancer, it reaches a certain stage, I would say the odds are 99.9% that's you're done. But look at all that's wrapped up in this. Done with what? Who's done? And what has that to do with me? So if the person said it with cruelty or negativity, you don't need to try to blame them or hate them for their insensitivity. Their nature is their reward. You should know that by now. But if they said it because they understand it to be true and it was said with some compassion, then you have to look at the parts of yourself that are clinging to this hope that it's not true, that somehow there will be a miracle. Now, what's wrong with hoping with a miracle? Nothing if the miracle doesn't include the miracle of Denise no longer suffering the fear of loss. Because it isn't that Denise holds a hope. It's more like a hope holds Denise. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Where is the pain in hope? Unless it's hope in things seen. And if the pain is the hope in things seen, then I have hope that I can let that nature go, that I can die to the thing that needs to die. This is why it was said, our hopes can't be in things seen, but in things unseen. Because when my hope is in things seen, my hope is in a time to come. And if my hope is in a time to come, it's in the belief that that's the only time that exists for me and the one I am hoping for. And God, if that comes to an end, not only is my child done, I'm done too. And that's the lie that you have to see through, Denise, if you've understood what I've spelled out. Can you see it at all?
Yes.
Now, here's the rub. This is my favorite part. Here's the rub. I can know something, but I can't live it yet.
Right.
So my prayer doesn't become in my hope. My prayer goes to the one possibility, the one true God, whatever that may be in my life. My hope goes to the Christ. Please let me live what I know is true. And please let me live what I know is true no matter what it costs me. Because if it's true, not just for me, for my son, it's true of life. And if it's true of light, it's true of this light that reveals it. Please. Because I'm in torment. I suffer immeasurably because I don't want what is to be what is.
Mm-hmm.
Please, thy will be done, not mine. But please let me understand the goodness of your will, not as a punishment, as something prescribed against me because I'm clinging to this idea that my child isn't going to leave this world. But please let your will show me where it is that there's this willfulness in me, a willfulness born out of an unquestioned identification with myself, not with the health of my child. And then please let me not judge myself for being the kind of person who clings to this not out of love, but out of the fear of losing this sense of self that believes it loves my child this way, and that my suffering proves that I love my child. Your suffering does not prove that you love your child.
Oh.
And you know that, by the way. Let me suffer myself, Father, that I might be constantly brought into a light that changes me, that brings me into a time that is without fear. Yeah, a time without fear.
That would be good.
It exists, Denise. You've had moments like that.
No.
But you can't have moments like that when you agree to the temptation of this hope in time. It's gone, and you're gone. And then real hope is gone, by the way. Because real hope isn't in a time to come. Real hope is in a timeless nature that ensures that everything good takes place to all those who love what is good. That's the real hope. It's timeless. It's not imagined. It's nearer to you than your jugular vein, and you must begin to fight for yourself that way.
I do know that, and thank you for reminding me again and
That's all,
again.
well,
and again.
apparently that's what I'm on. That's why I'm here.
Thank you, Guy.
Whether I want to be here is immaterial, and whether you want this to be true is immaterial. This is what is. And I don't have someone to convince me. I don't need people to write a book. I don't need to look to the Bible. I don't need to look to anything to know what is. And now I know what is. Now I must do my best to separate myself, the wheat from the chaff, from what is holy and timeless and true and good and that does not fear, from that which can do nothing but fear this separation it imagines. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Denise. Wow. So, Guy, we're at 11:07. I have 2 questions left. What would you like to do?
Go get pizza?
Sounds good to me.
We'll take the 2 written questions and we'll call it a day.
Sounds good. Okay, this next question came in from Susanna, and she says, then what should we say to ourselves? At the moment we plan some future resolve.
Then what should we say to ourselves at the moment we plan some future resolve? Hi, Susanna. Always like to talk to you. No. Oh, Susanna. Don't you talk to yourself. Can you see, Susanna, everybody? I want to know what to do when suddenly I'm faced with an anxious moment, a fearful condition. I want to know what to do. And hidden in the very idea that somehow I must do something to change or control the conditions throws me into the hands of a nature that talks me through it. This is a terrible picture, but it just comes. Imagine with these movies, and here's somebody on a ledge, and the good cop or the wise psychiatrist or whatever it is, the person polishing the floor sees it goes out, and we know how it goes. That person like Leonardo DiCaprio, talks her off the edge of the boat of the Titanic. Instead of talking her off the edge, Leonardo says, "Go jump." Or pushes her. When we talk to ourselves about what we don't want, it's the nature that doesn't want that moment that's doing the talking. We don't know who we are outside of that nature that doesn't want the moment, which is why we keep repeating the moment, because we're listening to the guidance of a nature creating it. So if you want to work at something, Susanna, catch yourself wanting to talk to yourself about how to resolve the moment, and realize you're talking to the same nature you've been talking to for as long as you've been in a body, and you're still trying to figure out how to resolve the moment you don't want. And if you see that clearly enough, there will be some separation. In fact, even suspecting the truth of that will create some sense of separation. And in that, a little bit of light. You'll see a little bit about Susanna you didn't know. We believe that there are 1,000,000 different plans to escape a pain. There are not 1,000,000 different plans to escape a pain. There is, in our experience, a pain that imagines 1,000,000 different ways to escape itself. And every last one of those ways it plans to escape itself belong to the existence of a time to come. As hard as it is, catch yourself looking out at a time to come, talking to something that you think is you but isn't you. Because if I'm talking to myself, where is the self that's doing the talking? Can't be me. I'm listening. It's out there. Thought is out there in time, in the time it has created. Just catch some of that, Susanna. And as best you can, if nothing else, just momentarily suspend the conversation. Don't listen to something talk you off the ledge. Instead, recognize that whatever is trying to talk you off the ledge is actually convincing you that there's a ledge that you should jump off of. You have to see it. The more you see it, the freer you'll be. Let's go to the last.
All right. Last question comes in from Frida. Hello, Guy. Last time I asked why I don't feel anything when I see something beautiful. I have long been aware that I no longer feel love. And when you don't feel love, there's really nothing. But then at other times, I do see the movement within me that allows me to see things Frida does again. So there's a part that is stuck, dead, but another part of who I am that moves. Is that part that is dead the whole consciousness, or is it only part of it?
You misread that part, Terry. Is that part that is dead the whole unconsciousness, or is it only part of it? Thank you. Look.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. Frida, I know how important these questions are. I know they're important because a person has to be examining their life in order to even question the life they have. I have to examine my life. Why? Because all that I have determined so far through my examinations has proven in one way or another futile. And so it comes to me that I have to examine it more deeply, which is true. But Frida, the question is, what does it mean to examine one's life? From the sound of it, you're examining your life in thought. You have an experience of feeling dead, of not knowing what love is. You have this experience of feeling stuck, and you want to examine it. But in order for that kind of examination to take place, Frida, there is this unseen separation. There is what I'm examining and the me that's examining it. And that's the illusion. The experience that I say I want to understand will never be understood by the nature that takes thought about its own experience. The true examination of oneself takes place in a certain kind of light of silence. The true examination is what is revealed, not what is sought after. So that the revelation is the examination. Because what is it that I'm seeing as these things are revealed to me about myself, other than what I have never examined before because I didn't even know it was there? So don't get caught. All of you, listen to me. Who you are can't be stuck. That's the grand illusion. Stuck where? Stuck in an analysis that has no continuity. Stuck in an analysis that has no future. I feel stuck because my mind won't come up with a time when I won't be stuck. The mind that won't come up with a time where you won't be stuck is the mind you're stuck in. It's just bouncing back and forth. I do see the movement within me that allows me to see things, Frida does again. Just stay with that, Frida. Not stuck with seeing movement. Oh, I've seen that before. In the moment that you judge yourself for any of these things, you are stuck, but not in the condition you blame for being stuck, not even stuck in that consciousness, but stuck in an identity derived from that judgment, stuck in judgment, stuck in wanting and not wanting, stuck in a desire that only exists, as painful as it is, because I've imagined a time to come when I won't have pain. I could go at this 100 different ways, Frida, but I think you understand this. And the last thing I'm going to say to you is this. It's so easy to get stuck. Because when I feel something I don't want to feel, the mind that is busy rejecting its own experience will come upon a conditioned part of itself. It'll call on the past. It'll say, see, you don't know what beauty is. Because at some point in time prior to that, I identified with this idea that I can't see what's beautiful. I don't know why we're so afraid to let life play itself out without trying to define for ourselves our part in that life and how life should unfold to support the part I've imagined I deserve. In the end, so to speak, for which there is none, a person will discover by the grace of God that their life has been, always will be, in the hands of the God that created them. That God, that divinity, that light, that love, that Christ, call it what you will, is not the least bit concerned with anything that this nature that has been created by time is concerned with. Creation is rebirth. Rebirth is freedom. Rebirth is inseparable from creation. Creation is inseparable from the passing of itself. As you allow creation to appear and disappear, and with it the corresponding sense of self that wants to drive itself from that moment, then you will know what it means to be reborn. Then there won't be any more judgment of yourself or of others. There won't be this painful, constant looking to a time when you'll finally transcend whatever it is that you have judged yourself as missing or not being. And none of that can be thought about other than to bring about the illusion of a thinker that somehow now knows who and what they are. All of that has to go, and it will go if you'll give yourself to the light that shows you these truths. I will see local students next Sunday at the Annex building. I will see all of you online, streaming as we do next Sunday. And until then, try to remember as best you can this exercise. What you're looking for is not out there. It's not in time. Don't look for it there. Instead, consciously suffer the nature that has to have time in order to escape itself. And when you stop trying to escape yourself, you will find the saving grace. There was never a self that had to be escaped as imagined.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all those questions.